So for milestone 2, I have coded the Shiver Me Timber word scramble and the coin toss. And before I demo those, well, I think I'll demo them first. So in the word scramble, there's 3 different phrases that you can pick from. And so you pick a phrase and it lays the letters out in the HTML5 canvas. Come down here and you start keying in words. So you type the word, press enter. And what it does is it checks well, first it checks to make sure the letters are in here. And then it checks an API dictionary to make sure it's actually a word. So now I'm going to actually key in something that's not a word. Okay, so first it checks the letters. So I used letters that weren't in here. So now if I just use letters that are in here, now it validated, yeah, those letters are in here, then it checks the dictionary. Okay, so it doesn't let you just make up words. You have to use real words and you have to use the letters that are there. Now, if you duplicate a word, it will not catch it until you go to score. And you don't get points for 2-letter words. Okay, so if you start doing 2-letter words, you can type them in, but you're not going to get any points for them. Okay, so I've got some words. I'm going to go ahead and tally up the points. And so these are the words I got points for. You can see this is a 2-letter word, so I don't get any points for that one. Totaled up my points. And then it also told me which ones were duplicated. So I kept the original list down here so you could kind of check. So it says walk is duplicated. And you can say, oh yeah, I did key that twice. Plan is duplicated. Okay, and then it gave you points for all the other words. Okay, and then if you want to, try again or try a different phrase, you just reset and then you can try it again. Coin toss is the other game. And this game does not need to be done, but mine is completed. It's basically a heads and tails game, but I just kind of gave it a little pirate twist. So basically the player selects heads or tails. And when you point, I have it so this little gear noise plays. And I don't know if you can hear it because I got my headphones on, but when you play it, you will definitely hear it. So it's like gears. And then you basically start clicking and you should see, you click on heads. Here the result was tails. So the pirate score went up. The first person to 25 is going to win. And then if the pirate wins, you are going to hear a boing noise. And then if the player wins, you hear like, yay. So I added those little sound effects. Uh-oh, it's not looking good for us. All right. So here the pirates win. And then if I want to play again, I can just hit play again. It resets everything and you can play again. Right, so that is my pirate game. And we'll go ahead and do the slideshow. Okay, so my audience is still people who like playing classic games with pirate twist, interactive features. On the menu, I've got the mouse over, horizontal menu bar. Layout and color scheme is still pretty much the same. I stuck with the same colors in both the coin toss and the scramble game. They're fairly responsive, but I will say that the scramble game is a little bit more limited because of the canvas. The canvas where the letters layout is 500 pixels, and pixels are not responsive. So it'll go to a width of 500 and then, you'll have to scroll. And we've already talked about all this menu stuff. So we are going to keep going to the actual games. So as you saw, we could choose a pirate phrase and make words from the letters. And so in order to do this, I put the focus on the input box, and then I basically checked for the enter key. And you can see that in my code when I show it to you in a minute. And you can enter as many words as you want. And then when you're ready to check them, you hit tally points. And again, it goes through and it checks to make sure you've entered valid letters, and then it checks the Open API dictionary. So it validates all the words, and then it tallies your points. And when it tallies the points, that is when it looks for duplicated words and it throws those out. And so to enable players to play again, I actually use window location reload. And I added an event listener to the play again button. That is how I handle playing again. The letters are displayed in the HTML5 canvas. Coding was all done in JavaScript. I did a lot of array handling in this one. Array handling was used to split the phrases into array elements. And then I had to run it through a split to remove the spaces. And then I had to do a join. And so there's a lot of array handling, which I'll show you in a minute. As far as the canvas goes, I decided to have 5 columns of letters. The cell height and width, along with the number of columns, basically determine how many rows there are. So it looks at the width of the canvas, it looks at the number of columns I want, it looks at the cell height and width of the squares, and then it figures out how many rows. So again, the size of the canvas is in pixels. That's the only thing that will affect the responsiveness, as far as screens go. And I did think 500 was okay because, technically you could tip your phone horizontally and 500 would fit on a phone. The variables in my code, I kind of declared up at the top. And so you can see I've got a letters array. And these are the letters of the words and the phrases that they pick. They end up going in there. And then the valid words are going to be, my end list once they have gone through and validated the letters, and then they've checked against the API, whatever's invalid words are the ones that I'm actually going to tally up. Okay, cell width and cell height, those are for the squares, the letter squares. Found it is what it's a little flag that I set when I'm looking for duplicate words. Okay, and then you can see I've got points for the words. Here's just a little display. And you can see I've got a display for duplicates as well as the display for the points. Retrieving the letters and placing them on the canvas. So I had 3 different phrases that all had IDs. And so this is, they're all kind of coded the same. So this is phrase 1. So when they click on that first phrase, we are retrieving the text, converting it to lowercase, and then I'm removing the spaces between the words and splitting each of the letters into a separate element, and they go into this letters array. And then we draw the board. And so the board is the canvas. Okay, so you can see that it is going through all of the letters, and it is placing them in the canvas. Okay, and it is using the number of columns, 5, to figure out how many rows, and it is using the cell width along with the padding to determine spacing. And then I've got the color for the different tiles, the font that I'm using, and you can kind of follow how that is all laid out there. So this is a really long anonymous function. And so this is words is the input box where each word is entered. And so it is checking for the enter mark. So every time you push a key down, it is looking to see if the enter mark has been pressed, because when the enter mark is pressed, the word is done. We're done entering the word. Okay, so when that enter mark gets pressed, it retrieves the word they typed. And then I'm blanking out the input box and putting the focus back on the input box right away. Converting to lowercase. And this is basically I am taking that word that was entered and splitting it into a letter check array. And I am checking that against my initial list of letters, to make sure that each letter that is in the word that they entered was also in the letter list. So they can't use a letter that's not, on the canvas. They have to use the letters that are there. And this is how we're doing it. So it's going letter by letter, and it's checking each letter from the word. So each letter from the word is put into this letter check array. So it is checking each letter from the word against the full list of letters. Okay, and you can see that the found flag is initially set to false, and it's only going to be set to true if the letter that they typed is in my list of letters. Okay, if the letter they typed is not in the list, found is going to be false, which means they didn't find the letter, so it's not a valid word. Okay, so if it's not a valid word, what happens is it comes down here to else, and it tells them you did invalid letters. If it is a valid word, if found is true, then we check the dictionary. So there's a dictionary flag I set to false. Here is my call to API Open Dictionary. And you can see that I am concatenating the word that they entered. So this comes from API Open Dictionary. This is the word they're checking. And then here's my callback function. Okay. And so here I've got the response. And so if the response.word is the word that was entered, and you can see I converted it to lowercase, then it is in the dictionary. Okay, and response sub-0, this is how API Open Dictionary is returning it. It's in an array, and the word is, one of the first name value pairs that I can access. So in dictionary, if they found it, in dictionary is set to true. I take the word and I add it to a valid words array. And then I set this message to a blank. And That's basically how it works. And then if it's not in the dictionary, I had to put a timeout on this because the it was actually running through this before it had a chance to check the dictionary. So I have a delay on this. Although you still might see it blink before you see the word display in the valid word list. Okay, so this is saying it's in the dictionary. This is adding it to the valid word list, and you're seeing all of the words display in the list below the input box. And you're only going to see this if the word is not there. Okay, so that's kind of how all of that works. Scoring, it looks like it was complicated, but it actually wasn't. I just did a switch because it's all based on the length of the word. So the valid words array is what I'm looking at. And you can see I'm doing a for loop based on the length of that array. And here I am checking for some duplicates. So if the word is a duplicate, then I add to this little duplicates, a duplicate string that will display below the points for each word so that they know that there was a duplicate and the word wasn't counted twice. And I actually remove it from the valid words using the splice command. Okay. Otherwise, if it's not a dupe, then I add one to found it because we've, the word is okay. Then here are the different points. You can see if it's a 1 or a 2 length word, then they don't get any points. So they only get points if it's 3 or above. So that actually wasn't too bad. So you can see I've got something that I have like the total points and then the point for the word. And when we played the game, you could see that the points for each word were displayed and the total points were at the bottom. So you can see I've got the word itself and then the points for that word. And that goes into a point string. And then I have the total points that I add at the very end. Okay, so this is total points, and then this is the points for the word. And then you can see I'm displaying all the point information, and then I display the duplicate information. So that actually, it wasn't like difficult, but it did take some thought as far as, how you want to display everything. So again, this there was a lot of array handling in this. It took a lot of thought, but I didn't really have problems with it. Game 2, my pirate chance coin toss. So I did complete this game, although the game does not have to be completed in Milestone2. And I've already explained how to play it. It's just a basic heads and tails game. And so, if the player wins, they get a point. If the pirate wins, they get a 1.5 points. And so the player points to heads or tails and they spin. There's little geary noises that play. And when they click, they start seeing the results. So this is a game is coded entirely in jQuery. When they click on the tails button, it goes through this tails event handler. And I have a similar one for heads. And you can see that I'm using math.random for heads or tails. And then, based on what they pick, their scores are increased. And then we check to see if there's a winner. If there is a winner, then a message is displayed and the appropriate sound effect is played. Okay, so there's pretty much the same code here for heads. Now, I wouldn't really call it a problem, but trying to get the sound was tricky. I tried a lot of different ways to do it, and the way that worked the best for me was to use the audio tags, and I put them in my HTML, but I don't have controls and I don't have a size, so you can't see them. So it's like they're hidden, but they're there. And so putting them in my HTML and putting an ID associated with them made it really easy for me to access them in JavaScript and jQuery. So here you can see that I use get element by ID, and I assign a variable to each of the audio files. So this is the gears, and then I think two is probably the yay sound, and three might be the boing. But for this little section of code, this is all about the gears. So when they point at the heads coin, the gear plays, and when they move the mouse off, it pauses and it resets the time on the audio. And then tails works the same way. If they point at the tails, it plays. They move the mouse off, it stops. And then in that code that I showed you where it was calculating score, that is where it's determining if somebody wins. And so here, audio element 3, this is the yay. So if the player wins, it's going to play yay. And then otherwise, if the pirate wins, it loads this boing noise. Okay, and that is my games.